Hello and welcome to the Real Estate Crowdfunding Show, syndication in the digital age at gowercrowd.com with your host, Adam Gower. Today is another kind of hybrid life in the day of coronavirus episode and the regular programming, because I'm talking to Dave Jackson of the School of Podcasting and at Libsyn. Podcasting has been an extraordinary addition to my life. And in fact, it was what kicked off my migration from the fully analog world that I was living in to the fully digital world that I now inhabit. And right at the very beginning, I learned that Libsyn was an important resource for getting your podcast out to the masses and for syndicating it. And Dave, my guest, has a bunch of extremely valuable, useful resources that basically I consumed in vast quantities when I got started. Well, I asked him today to talk about how podcasting can impact your online presence, how you can get your message across. And it was supposed to be in the context, if you're sitting there at home trying to figure out what you're going to do, right, in terms of getting your messaging out. Well, podcasting is a really excellent way. So if you have been thinking about it, today's is an excellent resource for you to learn a great deal about one of the true experts and educators in the industry, Dave Jackson. And I've put a bunch of links to Dave and to all his resources there on the podcast page for today's episode, where you will also find other resources that we've been putting together, including how to upgrade your home office, a guide for crisis communications. We've also got our flagship investor acquisition system online master course at a discounted rate of over 80% off while everybody is sheltering in place. So be sure to go to gowercrowd.com to take advantage of all those resources to help you through this crazy time. All right, that's it. I am now very pleased to bring you from the School of Podcasting and from Libsyn, Mr. Dave Jackson. So there's a couple of things, I wanted to talk to you about today. What triggered this was that I emailed you last week. First, I want to know actually who you are, because you wear a few hats. You pop up all over the place in my world and have done ever since I went online. So I owe you a debt of gratitude for all the help you've given me over the years. Seriously, get me online. It's really, podcasting changed my life. It's as simple as that.
I keep telling people, I said, I have yet to meet somebody who says my life is worse because I started a podcast. There are people that start a podcast and, they do it for 6 weeks and they quit because it wasn't what they thought, but they still learn something through that experience that they go, yeah, I didn't do that, but I'm a little more confident now when I speak or whatever it is. There's always a byproduct of podcasting.
So. Well, it's funny because I was actually contacted by somebody on LinkedIn recently. A fellow who was selling how to make money with your podcast services, right? Basically. And he said to me, do you make money with your podcast? And it was I'm writing an article. He said, I'm writing an article. Right. So I wanted to ask you if that was basically a lead into a pitch. I knew it exactly. He said, do you make money from your podcast? And I thought about it for a minute and I said, actually, yes. I don't sell anything on the podcast. I don't, put advertising. For all of those who do advertise, to me, that's, in my business, a ghastly thought. But when people contact me who I've never met before, and they tell me, I feel like I know you.
Bingo.
It's an extraordinary feeling, really. That is what podcasting is. It's really extraordinary, the power that you have. So let's get into that question that I had. And I do want to talk about what's going on in the world as well, Dave, because, and let's talk about how people can be expressive and how podcasting can help, etc., with what's going on, how we can inspire people to kind of rise up out of this morass and move forwards, even when it seems like everything's slowing down. But let's start with the email that I sent you. And I sent you an email because I was invited as a guest on a podcast. And the guy said I get 50,000 hits, 50,000 downloads a month. And then I thought, well, wait a minute. He's putting out a podcast every single day.
That's it.
So, okay. So, and most of these downloads are automatic because as soon as somebody subscribes, it's like an auto down. So who knows if actually anyone's listening? I know the power of mine, right? But I emailed you and I said to you, all right, Dave, should I, because all the podcasts that I put together, as you know, are split up into little ones.
Mm-hmm.
And then we distribute those on social media. But I only have one a week. It's a big one, 45 minutes or so. And I asked you, is it better to have one big one, right, that gets maybe 500, 600 downloads each time, or one a day? Tell me what your answer was, because it was a really good one.
It depends on what you're doing. I don't remember what my answer is, but this is my typical answer is it depends on who your audience is. If I'm doing a podcast for busy moms, a busy mom doesn't have 45 minutes to listen to a show. It also depends on what you're trying to do with your show. If I'm trying to show I really know my subject, then I'm going to do a 45-minute podcast, and I'm going to do a deep dive that you can't get anyplace else. And really show off my expertise. But my favorite line on length is from Valerie Geller. She has a book called Beyond Powerful Radio. And she says, there is no such thing as too long, only too boring. So it really does. I think every successful podcaster at their core, you have to really understand who your audience is. Because without that, you're giving people, I now use the analogy of, my mom used to make this stuff called stew. I don't know what you guys call it in the UK, but it's basically potatoes and meat and carrots, and you throw a bunch of gravy in it, and here it is. And I said, you could make a stew, and you could invite your best friends over, and the first person's going to walk in and go, is that gluten free? And you go, oh, boy. And the next person goes, is that real beef, or is that like the new veggie beef stuff? And if you don't know who your audience is, you're serving up stuff that they don't want. So you really have to know who your audience is. But that's really, is that, I honestly, I don't remember what I told you, but that's my default answer.
Yeah. And I think that, and you were very generous actually in the answer that you gave me. And by the way, anybody that is thinking, so I may actually ask you this: School of Podcasting and Libsyn. Mm-hmm. So I hear from you through Libsyn, and I think I've listened to your podcast is how I came to be online. Just explain the difference between these two.
Sure. Well, we talked about we're going to be talking about the power of podcasting. My background's in teaching. I taught in the corporate world for decades, taught a lot of Microsoft Office and a lot of QuickBooks and, time management and customer service and things like that. And much like radio, about every 7 years, they hire a bunch of people that couldn't sell training. And so they would downsize the training department rather than let go of the sales guys that can't sell. And the last time that happened, I was like, I want a job in podcasting. And at the time I hosted my stuff at Libsyn, and I knew the guy that worked there, and I called him up and I said, this could be a really awkward conversation. He's like, what's going on? I go, I got good news and bad news. And he's like, all right, I'll play. I'm like, the bad news is I just lost my job. And he goes, what's the good news? I go, I'm available to work for you, buddy. And 2 weeks later I was hired at Libsyn. So yeah, I went from having the School of Podcasting was my main employment in between teaching jobs to now it's just a super side hustle. But what I love about it is working at Libsyn, and Libsyn is the oldest and biggest podcast media hosting company. I'm still doing teaching. It's just one-on-one now via email versus 1-on-20 in a classroom. And it gives me a really great insight into what people are struggling with. So that gives me ideas for my own show, as well as tutorials for the School of Podcasting and things like that. So I love the view it gets. And then the other thing I love is I used to have to take my vacation days to go to these different events. And now they send me all over the place to work the Libsyn booth. So it's people always say, where do you think you're going to be in 5 years? And I'm like, hopefully right here. I'm pretty much happy where I'm at. So that's the difference between the two. Libsyn is my day job, and now the School of Podcasting is my super series side hustle.
So I'm taking notes over here, so I don't want to forget what I was going to say. So what you did recommend actually was very interesting to me. It was a very interesting perspective. And that was, and by the way, sorry, I've got a dog falling asleep.
That's all right.
Making strange noises. It's not
I
me.
thought your stomach was having a really weird thing going on, but
he makes these funny noises.
That's right. He's having a bad dream. No, I had a dog that used to do the same thing.
All right. Anyway, you'll stop sooner or later. Anyway, but what you said actually was very interesting, and it is the idea. That is what podcasting is. podcasting, really, I think at its core, actually it's two things. It's teaching, but for me, actually, it's been learning. See, when I started podcasting, however many years ago, I had just got a PhD, actually, and it gave me this confidence to go out in the world because very, very few other people in my industry have a PhD. And so I thought, all right, so this kind of gives me a license to contact professors of real estate who are talking about amazing things and have done incredible research, but whose reach is a dozen other professors. Basically, that's all I do. So I called them all, and they came on my show, and it was very interesting, actually. It gave me it's how I learned to do it. Now with my new series, which is all about social media and digital marketing, communications, basically, what I do is whenever I want to know something about a corner of the industry, I call the top person, right, in the world on that subject and say, do you want to be on my podcast? You know what, Dave? Most times they say yes. And then I sit and ask them all about the subjects I want to learn about. And at the same time, you end up teaching.
Yeah, that's the beauty of it is I had a client of mine once, and I asked him, I'm like, how's the podcast going? And he's like, yeah. And I'm like, well, like, how are your downloads? He's like, oh, they're whatever. And I'm like, wait, why are you doing the podcast again? And he said, oh, that's easy. He goes, I get to talk to people I have no business talking to. And he said, I got right by the gatekeeper. He goes, because the CEOs listen to my podcast on the treadmill. And he's like, so it's beautiful. I've interviewed heroes of mine that I thought I would never talk to. And then the other thing that's great about that is people always ask me, should I do a solo show or should I do an interview show? And I always say do both, because the solo show, you build your relationship with your audience because you're just talking to that one person. Don't do things like, hey, everybody, hey, guys, how's it going? I always say, thank you so much for tuning in. I'm so glad you're here. I always talk to one person.
Yeah.
And then when I do an interview, I'm growing my network. So you're growing your influence and you're growing your network. And so don't rope yourself in on, do I have to do one or the other? So it's, and the interviews are great because you get to meet people, like you said, and it's amazing when they say yes. You're like, really? Okay, great.
Quick, let's book a time before you change your mind.
Exactly.
Yeah, that's really interesting. I've never actually thought of doing a solo show. The only time go ahead.
Your podcast really is, for me, it hasn't been my business. It's been my business card. So I was hired once. There was a big social event called New Media Expo. And the guy that was running their podcast track stepped down. And so at the time, it didn't work for Libsyn. So they called Libsyn because it was one of their main sponsors. They go, who do you think? And they said, what about Dave Jackson? And then he called Blueberry. And they said, what about Dave Jackson? And then he called Spreaker. And they said, what? He goes, honest. He goes, I don't want to call anybody else. I'm just going to call you. And stuff like that you can't write. But all those companies knew me because I had interviewed them all on my podcast. So there goes your network again. They all listen to my podcast because I was finding things. They're like, oh, maybe we should add that to our platform and things like that. So that's the other one that's always a little hard for me is when people go, well, you're an influencer. And I'm like, well, no, it's just, it's me in a spare bedroom. And they're like, no. It's like, I have people all the time like, can I pick your brain? And it dawned on me that whole pick your brain thing is called consulting and you can charge for that. So right. Your podcast is kind of your business card. I think one of my favorite phone calls that a guy called me once, and he was driving from like the middle of the US to one of the corners. And he said, I have a phone number on my website. And from time to time, I'll actually answer that. Usually it goes to voicemail, but I picked it up and he goes, wait, is this Dave? And I go, yeah. I go, what can I do for you? And he's like, really? And I'm like, yeah. He goes, well, I just want to let you know I'm driving from point A to point B. He goes, I've been listening to you for about 6 hours straight. And I said, man, that is a lot of Dave. And he goes, I don't know what I'm going to podcast about, but I just know you're my guy. And I'm like, okay, well, you know where to find me. So it really is a great marketing piece.
Yeah, I must say that when I first sent a request to Libsyn, a tech request early on, and I got an email from you, I thought, really, is Dave Jackson just wrote that thing? Doesn't he have like, helpers or something?
No, and I love it. And then that's what people kind of go, well, why are you doing that? I go, because I love it. I'm helping people. I'm seeing what the big pain points are and things of that nature. And and when I get somebody, especially this week, everybody's digging into stuff that they normally don't dig on because everybody has extra time this week. And so I'm getting all sorts of bizarre questions. And you're, in some cases, people are cutting back on their budgets. So people that used to have other people edit their show are now editing them themselves. And they're like, look, I don't know a thing about this. And so when I have somebody that approaches me and says, technology and I are not friends. In fact, we're enemies. And I'm pretty sure I'm never going to be able to do that. And within, 2 or 3 responses from email, they're like, oh, that wasn't so bad. That to me just puts so much gas in my tank that I'm like, okay, cool. I got another, happy podcaster out there. So
that's interesting. Actually, so of course it makes me want to just mention casually that I've actually put together a bunch of courses that show you how to use Audacity and also Camtasia.
Well, let me tell you something about that. I used to, when I first started in podcasting, if you had told me that, I'd be like, oh man, there's another competition, another guy selling pie. But I've learned that in many cases, your audience doesn't want to learn about podcasting from me. Not there's nothing wrong with what I'm doing, but they've got the relationship with you. And so I have a friend of mine that does a show about New Orleans. It's called Beyond Bourbon Street. It's this touristy place in Louisiana. And he said people asked him, I want to do one of these podcast things. And he would send them to me. And I have an affiliate program and we work things out. And he said, the person learned how to podcast and was really happy with what I'd given them and my service and everything like that. And they said, but Mark, I was kind of like, Mark's the guy's name. I was really kind of hoping to give you the money. Like I was looking to pay you. And he told me that. And he said, so in the future, he goes, I'm just going to let you know, I'm putting together some sort of podcasting course and it's nothing against you. And please don't hate me. I go, dude, I get the fact that you have the relationship with your audience. And of course they want to learn from you. And even though you can say Dave is my best buddy and, I want to I'm going to put you in Dave's hands. A lot of times they want to learn it from you. So I'm not offended by that as much as I used to. I used to be like, oh, here comes another one. And now I'm like, no, I kind of get it.
Actually, it's a very good point. We're talking specifically about podcasting and the concept of competition. Actually, the first point when you come up with an idea that is something that you want to express or the content that you want to actually put out there, seeing other people with that idea or something similar is proof of concept. Actually, right. If you suddenly put something out that is original thought, it might be that it isn't original thought. Somebody thought about it and there's no market for it. But let's talk about what's going on now, because you touched on an uptick, a change of usage patterns right now. And right now, even though this will be an evergreen podcast, but I'm going to put this out quickly.
Yeah.
Because I want to talk about the world as it's changing, right? And right now, we are in the midst of this pandemic. And basically, the entire world is sitting like you and I in their bedroom, wondering, right, how are they going to keep up appearances? How the heck am I going to conduct my life? So what do you think it is that podcasting can bring to them, either by finding content or by creating it, or the podcasters that how are their lives changing for the better as this unravels right now? We're right in the depths of it.
Well, there are a couple things. Number one, it does give you still have the ability to reach a global audience. For me, when I started back in 2005, one of the things that really sucked me into podcasting was I'm in literally nowhere, Ohio, and my first piece of voicemail came from a guy in Nuremberg, Germany, and I was like, did he say Germany? I was like, wait a minute, what? So you can reach the audience, and the other thing that's great about it is you're going to attract people that are very similar to you, because people that aren't like you may not like you. So when I see somebody that says, I like your show, I know that person probably is kind of sarcastic, because I'm a little sarcastic and We like to have fun and things like that. I've never met a listener of mine that I'm like, oh no, here comes whatever, here comes insert name here. And
Right.
I'm just, I don't have that. Anyone that comes in and says, I like your show, the more I talk to them, the more I like them. So you can definitely reach people. We're all kind of bored in. I'm waiting to hear what the numbers are, because part of me goes, well, the download numbers might go down because all those commuters are no longer commuting. And then I could also see where the numbers could go up, because there are a lot of people that can't listen to podcasts at work, but nobody's watching me now. So maybe I can listen at work now. And then there's another part of me that goes, yeah, but those people that are at home working also now have a 5-year-old and a 7-year-old and can't get anything done. So if the numbers go down, I could see this going either way. But the beauty of it is you don't need to spend $1,000 on equipment to get out there. You can start off with a $60 microphone and a cheap lighting kit if you're going to do video, and a webcam and things like that. But the beauty of it is, for me, one story I have is, have you ever had to put together a desk? Like you take it out of the box and it's slot A into tab B or whatever. And I was doing that in an office, and I was just ready to set the whole thing on fire. And I was really frustrated. And I said, hold on a second. And I grabbed my phone, I grabbed a Bluetooth speaker, and I turned on a podcast. And suddenly I wasn't alone in the room anymore. It was my buddy. He was making me laugh. And it completely was just a break from, okay, wait a minute. I just realized I put the drawer in upside down. It was a break from that.
Right.
And I could,
As
just
you do.
yeah, it's a great distraction. So I really see that as one thing that we might be able to provide at this point, is maybe a little distraction, especially in this case, the pandemic that we're talking about. It changes so quickly. If I did a podcast about it right now, just from today to yesterday, 3 days ago, we had 5 people in my little city that were confirmed that had it, and today we're up to 8. So it's just one of those things where I don't know if it's moving so quick. I don't know that doing a podcast about it would be
right. So, but Dave, no, but the question that I'm asking, so this is where I'm coming from with this. Yeah, sure. As soon as you talk about today's events, they're irrelevant tomorrow. Right. And even if this was a normal, situation, if we talk about today, it's going to be irrelevant next month or the month after.
Sure.
But the question I'm actually pursuing or searching the answer for now, right? Just in general, is that both you and I have voluntarily chosen to embrace the online world. Our lives we've made that decision to live in isolation, right? Working out of our homes, and to communicate using digital media. In this specific case, we're talking about a podcast. But millions of people today have involuntarily been put into that position. And so to me, it is an opportunity for them to discover the beauty, right? The liberating effect of being able to use digital media to communicate what it is that you're doing. And it could be in a live conversation with somebody, or like this conversation, it could be a live conversation, or a conversation that is recorded live, right? So by definition, every call is live at some point. And then once that is stamped and put out there, now other people can consume our thoughts and our ideas and our inspirations. So how do you think, what is the message that you think those that are listening today, irrespective of the fact of what's happening, the key is that suddenly they have to involuntarily figure out what is powerful about the digital world?
Yeah, and that's the issue. As somebody who did training for years, the worst thing I hated was when you had somebody who was forced to go to train. My boss said I had to take this class, and you're like, oh, holy cow, this person's going to be just horrendous. And so know that when you when you get into this digital thing, that okay, I'm not happy about this because I had to do this. So let's put that aside. I always tell people you have the skills. Have you ever been in the car and your favorite tune comes on from high school or whatever? You're listening to classic rock and you crank that thing up and then the phone rings and you go, well, hold on. What do? You turn down the volume so you can hear the phone. And I go, aha, you know how to mix audio. And then I go, have you ever uploaded a picture or an attachment to an email? And they go, yep. I go, then you can upload an MP3 file to your media host. Have you ever pressed start on a VCR back in the days when we had those, or on your DVR? I'm like, yep. Well, if you open Audacity, there's a big red button, and you're right. That's still the record button. So a lot of times we have the skills. We all know how to talk. I've had people hung up on me on the phone, but that's usually when you're in an argument. Usually if you're just having a good old how's it going, natural talk, nobody's hanging up on you. So it's not that your voice is horrible, that people cannot stand your voice, because if they did, they'd hang up all the time, and they don't. So it's not your voice. It's not the technology. You've got the skills. The thing that is driving you batty and stopping you from doing this is it's new. And we don't like change. We're afraid we're going to look stupid. You're not going to look stupid because it's not live radio. Anything that goes wrong, you can edit out later. And it's a beautiful, I just love it. Like you said, it's time shifted. So what happens if you're doing this for your business? Somebody will find one episode and go, that was really good. I kind of like her. She's pretty funny, or she's entertaining, or that guy's pretty cool. And they will download your back catalog. I have people all the time working at Libsyn. They'll go, there's something wrong. And I'm like, what? And they're like, I normally get X amount of downloads. And all of a sudden I got this big spike, and I'll look and you can see, because usually it's the same number. And you'll see like, okay, they downloaded their latest episode a bunch. And then all of a sudden there's 38 of all their past episodes have been downloaded 38 times. And I'm like, either somebody mentioned you on a stage, in a newsletter, something, but a bunch of people found your show and they're downloading your entire back catalog. And they're like,
crazy.
And so, yeah. So because they were downloaded in the current month, those stats go up for, all of a sudden, March 2020 is going through the roof. And I think I'm up to 714 episodes. And I did the math one day. 60% of my downloads in a given month are not from that given month. It's people downloading my back episodes. So again, you have this great, your business card keeps growing and growing, and you're answering all those questions. For me, I always tell businesses, if you have those questions that you're like, oh, if I have to answer that one more time, I'm just going to, jump out the window. I go, that's episode 1. Because now when somebody asks that question in email and you're like, oh, I can't believe I have to answer this again, just answer it again like you normally do. Oh, we also talk about this in our podcast, and here's a link to it, because they're going to go listen to that podcast and then download the other episodes. Well, the other episodes are all those other questions that you're like, oh, if I have to answer that again. And now when they do come back with a question, you have a much better trained customer and a much warmer customer. So now they're going to talk about those things that you want to talk about. Let's get down to the nitty gritty. And I've had a few people that have said, oh, I'm getting a much better. It sounds weird to use the word better, but I'm getting better leads now from my podcast, because they're better educated and they feel like they know you. That's like the best, scenario ever.
So that's fascinating that you say that. This idea that when people come to you, I'm like,
it's it. It's real. It's going to happen.
That's because the whole family's like piling back, and they went to the beach, so now it's like
they're coming back.
Yeah, normally it'd be a nice quiet day in the office. Get it these days. But it's interesting that you say that people you preempt the questions they're going to ask.
Right.
So that when they actually get to you in person, all that tedious stuff, all that monotonous kind of repetitive stuff that everybody asks has been taken care of. And what you're left with, as you said, is somebody who likes you, right? Because they wouldn't stick around if they didn't.
Right.
And who knows a lot of what you do already. So they're at that point of deep engagement when they actually speak to you, right? I mean, I don't sound crass about it, but they're ready to buy, basically. I mean,
Yeah.
that is the power. You've created a relationship with them automatically with this. I've got to say a couple things. There was one time, I'm so glad you explained that thing about the episodes, because
Yeah.
there was one time I had 3 days with 500 episode downloads every day. And I thought, what on earth is going on? But now
Yeah.
that you've explained that, I had no idea what was going on.
Yeah. I had a friend of mine that had a show, and for some reason, this super ridiculously popular blog post had pointed to one episode of his, and it would just every day was just getting pounded from this thing. And so, and then for whatever reason, that blog post went away. And all of a sudden he's like, hey, where do my downloads go? And he had gone into his Google Analytics and could see where this was sending him all this traffic. And now all of a sudden you'd go to that website and it gave you a 404 error that they just deleted it or the blog went away. But yeah, you never know. And you never know who's listening. I run a Northeast Ohio podcasters meetup, and I'm lucky if I get 10 people to show up. We're doing them now online, which is getting more people involved, but normally it's like 10 people. But one of them works for the local TV station and got me on TV. So you never know who's listening. And that's the beauty of it. Is I always tell people there's no spam in podcasting. If they don't like you, they will just swipe right and say delete. There's nothing you can do about that. So the people that are listening because they want your content.
Yeah. And so here's the thing now. So now there's all these people out there
Mhm.
who are this example that you gave of, you remember how to press the play button, how
Mhm.
to drag and drop something, okay, to to add something, or to do sound mixing in the car. It's a really
Right.
fascinating perspective, because that is the opportunity that we all have right now, right? It's something that we should grasp all the time, is the opportunity to learn, to explore, to move forwards, to add value to our lives that will carry us forwards in the future. But ever so more importantly today, when there is this kind of bleak world around us, right, online, everything that you look at, the idea to learn something that is within your grasp. Why? Because you already know how to do it. You just
Yeah.
don't realize that you can do it over here, right? So in this particular example,
Yeah.
in creating a podcast. So let me ask you a question. So I have a very good friend. His name is Eduardo. He's a big fan of the show, so I'm going to give a shout out to him right now. And he came to town not so long ago, and we were talking about business. And I said, Eduardo, you need to have a podcast, right? You've got to have a podcast. And so we talked a little bit, and he has a very different, unique perspective, not unique, but an unusual perspective in the real estate business. He likes buy and hold forever, right? Basically, right? Buy something and make sure you can hold it for the rest of your life to give to your kids. So I said, well, that's your subject. That's what you got to talk about. That's brilliant. No one's talking about that. And the people who will listen to you when you do a podcast, that they will be the people that will invest with you, that will want to be part of your network. So how do you, and it was relatively easy to draw that out of him, because I know him so well. He's a good, close friend, right? But how do you recommend somebody today who is at home, who hears you say, yeah, I know how to sound mix and I know how to drag and drop, etc. But like your friend, this one fellow spent $1,000 on a great mic. I've no idea what to talk about. How do you recommend somebody figures out what it is that is of value to their audience?
Well, number one, you have to, and this is the hard part. I always say starting a podcast is not hard. It's actually fairly easy. I can fire up an app right now, talk into the microphone, it'll be an Apple by the end of the week. Starting a podcast is not hard. Starting a good podcast is not easy. And this is why, because you have to figure out what your audience wants. And that usually means, in some cases, going where they are. Or that might be online, it might be in person. People always ask me, like, why do you go to all these events? And I go, half the time I'm there, I'm often there speaking, but really what I'm doing there is listening. I want to hear what their pain points are. What are they frustrated with? What are they trying to do? And then sometimes I've known a few people that have jumped into the pool of their audience, and they thought they were going to give them product A. Like, oh, this is I'm developing product A. I know my audience. They jump in, they find out, oh, you know what? They don't need product A. They need product B, and it goes gangbusters. So this could be Facebook groups. I had a client of mine that was doing a podcast about dads. And so we just subscribed to like every dad Facebook group, and they were all, what were they talking about? And a lot of it was about the injustice in the kind of the bias in the courts towards dads and things like that. So we got all these different topics that he wasn't guessing anymore. Does my audience want to talk about this? He knew they did because he saw what they were talking about. So there's Facebook groups, there's Quora, there's Reddit, as well as just go to where your audience is. So I had
well, hang on. I'm sorry to jump in, but when you say Facebook groups and Reddit, are you talking about excuse me, ways of figuring out what it is that you're going to talk about?
Yeah. So you could go there and just see what your audience is talking about. You can go, there's a great resource, and people skip this one, Amazon. So go find a book on your subject and then go look at the table of contents, but don't stop there. What you want to do is go look at the topics, because the people that didn't like the book are going to tell you what was missing. That's what they wanted to talk about. So if I write a thing about, I don't know, I'll just pick NASCAR, and there's a book on NASCAR, and there's a bunch of 5 stars, but there's that 1 star that says they didn't even talk about the history of NASCAR and back when Kyle Petty, and I don't know why I picked that example. I know nothing about NASCAR, but they didn't talk about this. There's a part of your audience that wants to talk about that. So go look at the 1-star reviews, because those people, any kind of reviews, 5-star reviews are, it's, how reviews are. You never know what to believe. But nobody puts a fake 1-star review, and although they're
well, there might be some malicious.
Yeah, they're going to say there might be somebody if it's your competition, but nonetheless, those are ways that you can kind of figure out what it is. And then I always tell people, if you can come up with some sort of group that will actually, I always say, find some friends, not named Mom or Cousin Ernie or whoever, get some friends and say, look, I want you to listen to this, or if you're developing it, I'm doing a show about blank. What would you want to hear on this show? And then go back and create a show that talks about that, and then give it to them and say, okay, here's my show. I want you to listen to this and talk about it like I'm not in the room. And I brought extra skin today. I just want this to be something that you're going to enjoy. Well, most people, if you explain it to them like, here's how you're going to benefit. This is for you. And all I want to do is make it better. So please let me know how I can make this better. One of my backgrounds was in music. And so when I was a teenager, I was in a band, and we would go down in the basement, and we'd have to figure out how to start and stop the song so we didn't sound like idiots, and we had to learn how to play in tune and things like that. But eventually we're like, all right, we got all the songs down. We'd get some friends over, and the friends would either say, that guy's kind of out of tune, or this guy, you're not hitting the high notes there, or whatever. You get some feedback, and once you tweak all that, then it's time to take it public. And so I know so many people that will start this process, and they just keep tweaking and tweaking and tweaking. And I'm like, you got to eventually, the comedian Kevin Hart says, you can practice your jokes all you want in the basement. You don't know if you're funny or not until you actually get on a stage. So there does come a time, because I know there are people that are planning on thinking about brainstorming about doing it's just like there comes a time when you have to put it out there. But that's really it.
You've said a lot of things, and I keep wanting to jump in, but I always
please do, because otherwise, as you've seen, I will ramble on for.
I get into trouble with the missus whenever I do it. Stop interrupting the guest. You
never had Dave Jackson on. That guy will talk for an hour. You got to interrupt me. Feel free.
Thinking about our audience today, this humongous audience of people who have been thrust into the online world, whether they want to or not. And who are looking for a way to grow, right? To thrive during this time of strife, so that you acquire something new that enhances your life today during these hard times, but that also gives you a skill and something of value, something that you can use that enhances your life into the future when all this is over. And podcasting is definitely one of those. And by the way, couple things. One, you know what occurs to me when people ask me what I advise them to do when they're trying to think about what they should be talking about. Mm-hmm. I think, and we've talked about this a little bit, I think, gosh, who do you want to meet? Right? Mm. Who is that group of people that you want to meet? I was talking to a guy recently who does triple net leasing, right? He raises money to do triple net leasing. It's a whole real estate thing. Okay. And I said, all right, so what parts of the world in your industry, he called me about setting up a podcast. Is it really tough to get in touch with, right? Is it like the mega brokers or is it the finance? Start a podcast on triple net leasing, right? Basically, and call all those people and say, I've got a podcast on triple net. A lot of them, you'd be surprised, will take your call. So that's one way to do it. But the other piece of advice that you've touched on is, and you mentioned it a few times actually, is this idea that you've got to start somewhere. Right. And I think you said there was this lovely line that you said, there's no such thing as a long podcast. There's just a boring podcast. I remember when I started, however many years ago, I remember editing and re-editing and editing and editing and over editing and sending it again and editing again. And I tweaked I looked up online, every possible way of changing the sound and is it high or low and everything. Now I don't do anything, I'm zero. But I have not listened to my first podcast since I recorded it, however many years ago. I'm afraid to. And so the advice, I can see you want to jump in, but the advice that I give to people is progress, not perfection. Just get something out there and get used to the process. You'll rise to the challenge and people will come on and they'll listen to the early ones and they'll laugh, right? If it's dreadful, but they'll still get value out of it and they'll appreciate that you've grown and moved forwards in your life as well.
Absolutely. And that's where, for me, podcasting is a lot like bowling or golf. You're only as good as your last game. And your goal is, I'm just trying to get better for the next round, whatever it is. And sometimes I always think it's funny. I will do a ton of research and it sounds like this is what my audience wants to talk about. I will put it out and I will go to bed and I'm like, I'm going to wake up tomorrow. My inbox is going to be filled. And I wake up and there's nothing. There's crickets. And then there are other times when you're like, oh, I'm kind of pushed for time. I don't know. I guess we could talk about this. So I'll put out an episode and I'm like, you kind of hit publish and you're kind of thinking, I'm not sure how this is going to go over. And you wake up and people are like, that was the best episode ever. So it's hard it's not a formula. You kind of do your best that you can, but you've got to start somewhere. I think one of my favorite quotes is from Zig Ziglar. He says, you don't have to be great to start, but you do have to start to be great. And when you first start off, so many people, I have a guy right now that cannot get over the idea of the audience. There's going to be an audience. And I go, when you first start, no, there isn't. You're going to be lucky if you get 30 people, and that's if you include your cousins. Creating the podcast is just the first part. The real hard part is getting people to listen. And he's keeps worried about like, oh, I'm going to have all these. I'm like, no, you're not going to have anybody listening to you until you tell somebody to listen. And so it's kind of weird. So when you first start off, if you're worried about sounding stupid, nobody's going to hear that.
Yes, don't worry. No one's listening anyway.
They might go back later, but like you said, my first episode is horrendous. I sound like I'm half asleep. I've got some weird rap music going on in the background. I don't know what was going on, But if you think about it, the first time you tied your shoes, you weren't very good at it. The first time you shot a basketball, the first time you drove. I remember driving when I was 16. I was just like halfway in my other lane. You're not good at anything. So, take some time.
But like you say, you got to start somewhere, right?
Got to start somewhere.
It's this amazing Nike slogan. Just do it. Just do it. Yeah. Now is the time as well. Right now in this world of morass, right? If you've ever even had the slightest thought about doing a podcast, now's the time.
Well,
Chalk it if it's not difficult.
and the opposite is also if somebody looks at whoever their favorite podcaster is. Like if I was going to play American football, we have a guy here, Tom Brady, that's super duper popular. Guy's 43, he's like the greatest of all time. And some people are like, you know what? I forget. I'm not even like, no, there's some little 13-year-old kid that wants to be Tom Brady, and he's going to start today. Now he's not going to beat Tom Brady for about another 20 years or so. But if he doesn't start today, he's never going to progress. And so Jordan Harbinger is a really popular podcast. He does the Jordan Harbinger show, and he says, start digging the well before you're thirsty. Because otherwise, it's now's not the time when you're like, oh, wow, I got to start a podcast and quit my day job in 6 weeks. You're like, it's probably not going to happen, but it'll help, but it's not going to replace your job yet. So,
but so right now, there's a lot of thirsty people, and you know what you can discover from. And we're talking about podcasts, and we're going to wrap up as well, because I could tell you and I could just keep on going. But now is the time. I remember, I'm not sure how this actually dovetails into this side of it. I remember somebody saying, no, I'm 50 years old. I'm not going to go to law school because by the time I graduate, you know, it'd be 6 years, I'll be 56. I said, all right, fine. But, you know, how old will you be in 6 years anyway? Right? You're gonna be that age anyway. So you can either choose to be something you want to be or not. And now you could say, you know, what's the point? There's no point, right? You know, all being well, we'd be back at work in 2 months. But you know what? If you start a podcast now in 2 months, hey, guess what? You'll have a podcast. Right? You'll have that momentum. You will have started. You will have learned some new techniques. You will have learned some new technology. You'll have an appreciation for a bunch of stuff. You'll have discovered a lot. You will be a better person as a result of it.
And I know one of the skills that I hear a lot of people talk about is, especially with technology doesn't throw them for a loop anymore, because eventually something's not going to work the way you thought it was going to work. If you do enough episodes, there's always going to be that one where you're like, I don't know, I sound like I'm underwater for some reason or whatever. And I just got done speaking at PodFest in Orlando, and they gave me a wireless microphone, and I did not plan this. And somebody asked me a question before I started, and I said, well, one of the things podcasting will do is you just kind of get used to going with the flow. And I'd set the base of the wireless microphone on the podium. I had not put it in a pocket yet. And I turned and walked away from the podium, and it ripped the microphone right off my shirt and fell down. And I go, see, going with the flow. And I just bent down, picked up the microphone, clipped it on my shirt, threw it in my pocket, and off we went. And I think that's just an example of the skill you get from being a podcaster, not alone, as well as you're better at shaping your ideas, because if you're doing a weekly show, you have to figure out what the heck I'm going to say. And then you start to understand what resonates with people and things like that. So
you know, actually, there's two skills that I've learned since I became a podcaster, and particularly since we're going to move straight into 3 final questions, Dave. Seriously.
Okay.
2 skills that I've acquired becoming a podcaster, and particularly since I did video. One, I definitely don't and ah as much as I used to. I'm more conscious of having streams of thought and being able to articulate them without, without pausing, right? Yeah. Basically. And the second thing with the video podcast, this is interesting. There's one guy that I really follow a lot in digital marketing, and he has this aura. There's something about him that makes him really, really attractive, right? From a professional perspective, right? Mm-hmm. And what I realized it was that he speaks with a smile. He's always got a smile. And actually, I'll just tell you this briefly, when I was in Japan, and I knew it was first then, I didn't speak a word of Japanese. I used to walk down the street, and I lived in a town where there was no Westerners at all. And so everybody, as I looked around, people had this, I could tell in their eyes, this kind of suspicious look, like, well, who's this guy? And so to compensate for that, I always smiled. And they would light up, right? You'd see people's faces lighting up with just a smile. And when I ended up sometime later speaking fluent Japanese, they said to me, oh yeah, we always thought you were a very friendly fellow. Right? They didn't realize that I had no clue what was going on in the world around me. Dave, let me ask you 3 final questions, if I may. These are my standard sign-off questions I ask everybody.
All right.
So, what is the most important thing you think somebody thinking about starting a podcast today should keep in mind?
Why are you starting a podcast? If you don't know if you cannot say why, you're never going to make it through the how. So it's why and who. So why am I doing it? Who is my target audience? And then that hard part again is figuring out what can I talk about that's going to hold their attention, but move them towards my why. But that's the first one is definitely why. Because some people like, if your answer is, I don't know, it sounds cool. Looks like fun. Everybody else is doing it. No, don't. Because you're going to do 3 episodes and quit. Which, you might learn something then. But if your goal is to, start a podcast and make a ton of cash in, 2 hours, no, that's just not going to happen.
Probably not a good idea.
Yeah.
Secondly, second question, what has been the hardest lesson you have learned in your podcasting life?
Being okay that not everybody's going to like me. That was one, but also that is also then empowering, because I did an episode, and I wish I would have done it about 10 years ago. I did an episode and I said, look, here's the deal. Because in January, every January, I get all those people, and I'm not making this up, they want to quit their day job in 6 weeks. And I just said, look, I know I'm a podcast consultant. I should tell you to follow your passion and follow me to follow the golden path to glory and fame and money from heaven. And he said, it's not going to happen. It's not going to happen in 6 weeks. I said, and the other thing is, I said, when I say to you that you're going to have to spend probably $15 to $20 a month for your podcast host, and you go, oh man, $15, I don't know. I go, look, I can say this because when I was younger, when I was growing up, there was a small period of time where my family was on welfare. And I said, I know there's a difference between being poor and being broke. And if you're going, $15, that's, I don't know if I can do that. I go, you don't need a podcast now. What you need is a job. And I go, and I'm not being insensitive. I'm like, I understand where you're at. I've been there when you go, do I want a soda or do I need gas for home? I've been there. And I said, so if that's your case and $15 is going to break it, it's not that you shouldn't podcast. It's that you shouldn't podcast now, and go deliver some pizzas, go drive an Uber, whatever it takes, And so I put that out, and I really expected people to go, you are poor shaming. You are, I just expected it. And instead, you know what it did? Those people quit contacting me. And I was like, oh, I should have done this years ago. Because people know, oh, well, if there's a guy listening and he goes $15, I don't know, he knows, don't bother Dave. And it's not that I don't care about that guy. In fact, I even said, I do care about you, because if $15 is ruining your budget, my guess is your family's a little tense right now. And podcasting is only going to pull time away from your family. So get your family straight, get your budget straight, and then come back and let's talk.
And then do a podcast about how you did that.
Yeah, exactly.
That's the way to go.
But I really expected people to kind of just go, how dare you make fun of people that are hard, having a hard time with their finances. Instead, it was just the direct opposite. And I was like, oh, I should have done that 10 years ago.
All right, last question. So, and then I've got a couple actually offline.
Okay.
What are your key daily habits that make you successful as a podcaster?
I don't quit. I really don't. Even when I don't get a lot of negative feedback, but if somebody gives me negative feedback, first of all, I look at it and go, do they have a point? Because I don't know everything about everything. And in some cases, if it's somebody that says, Dave, I need your show to be an hour and a half, and I want you to talk about, all sorts of other stuff, I can go, that's a great suggestion. That person is not my target audience. Because number one, I can't do an hour and a half show. That's way too much, Dave. You're looking at, 6 hours to do that. I'm like, I can't do that. And then the other thing is I do the Northeast Ohio Podcasters Meetup. I do a live show every Saturday called Ask the Podcast Coach. I'm constantly jumping in with brand new podcasters, because for me, that was 15 years ago. I don't remember what it's like to be afraid of technology. I don't remember what it's like. So I'm always trying to step in their shoes, because that's who I'm serving. And so there are times when I'll say like, oh, I had last year, I was like, oh, I forget about this. I had an older person that was starting a podcast, and I said, just copy and paste this code and it will put the player on your website. And they emailed back and said, what do you mean copy and paste? And I went, all right, challenge accepted, and off we went. Right. So I think that's one of the things I just try to live with my target audience, because the more I know them, the better the content, the more they're going to tell their friends, the more they tell their friends, the more people that are listening to my show, the more people listen to my show, the more people that are going to, but it really starts off with knowing your audience.
All right, Dave Jackson. So I'm going to sign off now. Thank you so much from the School of Podcasting and from Libsyn. Thank you so much for being on my podcast.
Adam, this has been a blast, buddy. You're right. We could talk about this for another 5 hours. So thank you so much. I really do appreciate the opportunity.
All right, that was Dave Jackson from the School of Podcasting and from Libsyn. As you can tell, a fabulously interesting, accomplished gentleman and a world expert on podcasting. I had a lot of fun talking to Dave. I can't wait to find out. He actually said he was going to put together a podcast on video podcasting. So I look forward to that, Dave. Do let me know when you syndicate that. I am very interested. All right, be sure to go to the podcast page for today's episode at gowercrowd.com, where there is a whole host of resources for you to help you get through these troubled times. Links to Dave, links to School of Podcasting, links to Libsyn, training on how to upgrade your home office, a guide for crisis communications that we put together for you, discount to our flagship investor acquisition system online master course, that's over 80% off, and a bunch of other podcasts and other stuff for you, right? So go ahead, explore that content and take advantage of it all. It's there for you. All right, that's it. Thanks so much for listening. And thank you, Dave Jackson from the School of Podcasting and from Libsyn, for your time with me today. That's all for this episode. I'll see you next time. And in the meantime, stay well. And for now, this is Dr. Adam Gower signing off.